Now, let's review just briefly. We have 3 problems. The way we react when we don't get our way. We look to the creation to meet our needs. We blame the creation for what comes out of us. And God has provided 4 things. He has provided love. He will cause your love to increase and abound for everybody. He will give you His joy. That means He will teach you so you will have the knowledge that you need to put into practice and become wise, that everything will be okay. He will comfort you when your heart breaks. People will let you down. If you haven't found that out, just wait. People will disappoint you. The hardest thing is when someone you really trust and you love, and maybe as a believer, does you in, mistreats you. He will comfort you, and He will give you peace. Now, you have to submit yourself to Him. That's what you have to do. You have to submit yourself to Him, and you have to be willing to let Him convict you of sin so that you can identify what you're doing wrong. And then you have to be willing to agree with Him and confess it. That makes you clean and empty. And if you stop there, you'll just sin again. Sam put together a little gear shift. He drew it out for someone he was talking to one day. And he said, it's just like a car. You see, you get in reverse, and that means that there's unconfessed sin in your life. And you can go out here and have your brand new car and crank it all up, and it's in reverse. And you know what will happen to you? You'll back up every time. And so what you do is you shift and you get into neutral. Now, if you go get in your new car that's filled with gasoline and you crank it up and you accelerate in neutral, where are you going to go? Nowhere. You'll just sit out there and you'll say, what is wrong with my car? Now, if you're on a hill in neutral, you'll not only sit there, but you'll roll back. Now, that's the way the Christian life is. See, reverse is unconfessed sin. Neutral is confessed sin, empty. But you shift into forward gear, and that's when you ask Him to fill you with His Spirit, and then you take off. You just take off. So neutral is a place you pass through. And when you find yourself back in reverse and you have sinned and God convicts you, then you confess it and get out of neutral as quickly as you can. Get into gear and enjoy your ride. Now, I have a way of saying the way I think it works. It's just my opinion, but I think of faith as a key. And you go out and you get in your car, and if you don't have the key, it won't work. You have a good car, there's nothing wrong with it, it's sitting right out there, it's all yours, you have the title, you get in there and you say, let's go, we won't go. That's stupid, isn't it? But you put the key in there and you turn it on, and the car takes off. Isn't that exciting? Faith, to me, is the key. And what I do is I take the Word of God and I say, God, I want it to work in my life. I'm going to turn you on in my life. Now, the last thing you have to do is be consistent. And it's easy to come and hear all this, and I often tell people, they laugh at me, but if I didn't speak so often, I would listen to my tapes. Because you easily forget. You slip right out of thinking this way, and you slip right back into what the world has to offer. And so you come and you hear, and if you don't review, if you don't have a support group to get together with, and that's one reason the videos are made, and the notebook is there, that you can take it home and you can use it for a devotional, you can use it with your family, you can use it in your Sunday school, you can invite your friends, and you can review, not because I said it. It don't mean anything that I said it. But what means something is that I've said what the Bible has to say, and you can count on that. Now, I've heard people say, well, I've already been to that seminar and I'm going to go to another one because I want to get higher and higher and higher. I want to add to. Well, that's fine. And you need to go to other seminars, and you need to go everywhere you can and learn everything you can. But don't put this aside. You have to keep being willing to let God control your life. You have to continue to let Him convict you. You have to continue to confess, and you have to continue to be filled. And then you add to it, and you walk in the Spirit as you grow and learn and experience new things. Now, I want to just share with you a story that everybody asked me to share. And it's one way I learned a great, great lesson. And it's funny that I learned it when we lived in the Philippines. And I learned it from a house girl who was illiterate. When we moved over there, when we got to Manila, I really thought I would die because the conditions were so awful. The people are wonderful, but the living conditions are deplorable. And I said to Sam, I cannot live in this place. And I cried at night, and I begged him to bring me home. And he said, we are not going home. We have nothing to go home to, and we are staying. One day, a Filipino lady came, and she said, Miss Peeples, I think you need to understand that in our culture, we have servants. Things begin to look better. And they call them servants. And it was plural. She said, we have live-in servants. And I said, well, where do I get them? And how many do I need? And she said, well, I think you ought to have 2. She said, I have a cousin that's illiterate, and nobody wants her to work for him, but she has a great heart and a great spirit. And I think if you'll bring her into your house, you'll be satisfied with her work. And so I said, fine. And so this little illiterate Filipino girl who spoke no English came to work for me. And she really was a funny-looking little Filipino. Straight hair, big eyes, just funny-looking little girl. And I had to tell her everything. I had to show her everything. And Sam, our son Sam, just took her as his project. And he came home from school every afternoon, and he would go in the kitchen, and he would get the recipes, and he would show her how to make something, and they would make it together. And they had a garden together, and they raised chickens together, and they went to market together. And even today I can hear Sam laughing within that. Dawn would come home. She didn't want to be there. She was pouting, so she just went in her room, closed the door, and stared at the wall. But she didn't do that. She had a big old picture of her first boyfriend. She blew it up 8 by 20, and she put it in her room, and she'd stare at that picture. Now, Mark was 14, and he would come home, and in our bedrooms we had little buttons. If you pushed that button, it rang a bell back in India's room, because she lived with us. See, India would did all the cooking, everything. I was called in one day and told that I made her cry because I made up my bed and I did the dishes one day. So I said, don't worry, won't do that anymore. So I didn't do anything. I met with her on Monday and gave her money, and she and Sam planned the food, did the shopping, prepared it, served it, cleaned up, and all I did was sit and eat. I was a guest in my own home. Now, in the bedrooms were these little buttons, and if you push it, it rang a bell back in her room. Well, when you push the button, she ran to see what you wanted. I'm not going to do that. If I want something, I'll get up and go get it. I'll go tell her. And I said to her, you make the coffee, and when I need it, I'll come get it. And so that was the way it worked. But Mark came home, and he thought that was the greatest thing that ever happened to any human being. And so he lay in the bed, and he pushed the button, and Inda ran up to his room, and he said to her, go get me some M&Ms. And I went up there, and I said, you lazy little rascal, you get up. Don't you call her. She works hard. And he came out of his room one day, and he said, I thought that's what she was here for. And I just, again, wanted to whop him one. I thought, you terrible kid. But remember, I was depressed. And one day we had a house guest, and Mark came home, and he saw that I was occupied, and so he went in his room and pushed that button, and Inda came to the door, and she looked at me and she said, excuse me, ma'am, Mark wants me. And I looked at her, and I realized she likes it. And so I said, okay, well, I figured I'd let her wait on him. What do I care? I'm depressed anyway. I'll just go back to bed, stare at the wall. And so every day for 2.5 years, Mark Peeples came home, went to his room, pushed the buzzer, I ran to his room and said, yes, Mark. And he said, Di, bring me some juice, bring me some iced tea, bring me something to eat. And she did it. And every morning I suddenly realized we had to get up at 5. I heard the buzzer and I ran to his room and she said, yes, Mark, every day. And he said, hey, Di, bring my clothes. And I realized that I kept Mark's clothes in her room. And so every day she dressed him. And I thought, I put his clothes in his room. She did. But then when they got soiled and she laundered them, she put them back under her bed. Well, 3 years later, we left. And we went to the airport. And when went to the airport with us to say goodbye, she told Sam goodbye and she told me goodbye. And we're all crying because we all love her and she loves us. And she hugged my son Sam and said goodbye, Sam, and they cried. And she hugged Dawn and said goodbye, Dawn. But when she got to Mark, she fell on her knees and grabbed him around the ankles. And she screamed, oh, ma'am, don't take Mark away from me. Oh, ma'am, don't take Mark. Mark, don't go. And she refused to let him go. Well, we were going to miss the flight, and so finally Sam said, Mary Glynn, we have to go. So we had to force her to let him go. And her little head fell down on the sidewalk, and she was crying hysterically. As we entered the airport door, I could hear her saying, oh, Mark, don't leave me, Mark. We cried all the way across the Pacific Ocean. And I thought, that's the kind of person I want to be. But there was something wrong with that story. Why did she treat Mark that way? Why didn't she treat Sam that way? Sam did more for her than anybody in the whole family. Why didn't she get on her knees and say, Sam, don't leave me? Why was it Mark? All he ever did was push the button and ask her to come wait on him. Couldn't figure it out. Until one day I read a verse. And that verse said, if you love me, you will keep my commandments and I will manifest myself to you. And I suddenly realized what was happening. You see, you have to realize that Inda was a servant. Now, we don't use that word. It's a bad word in our culture. But over there, she was a servant. And so her reason for life was to serve the Peeples. She didn't have a family. She didn't have any money. She didn't have a home. Just us. And all she wanted to do was wait on us. And I wouldn't let her. And Sam and the 2 children wouldn't let her. And Mark was the only one that let her do what she came to do. And so I realized that Inda is a picture of what I need to let Jesus Christ be to me. Now, some people find this offensive. But I want to tell you, you stop and realize that he came as a servant. He didn't come as king. He was born in a manger. He never did anything. He never went anywhere. He healed the sick and made the blind to see and raised the dead and fed the 5,000. What more would you do to serve people than what he did? He's a servant. And he even went to the cross and let him hang him there in our place. He was serving us. And then he rose from the dead. And you know where the Bible tells us he is today? He sits on the right hand of God the Father in heaven, making intercession for us. That's what he's doing. He's still serving us. Now, I'm fully aware that one day he will stand up and step out and come back and be the king. But he hasn't done that yet. And so I realized that Inda is a picture of how I need to let Jesus Christ serve me. I need to push his button. I need to say, Lord, I have sinned. You forgive me. And he will. I need to say, Lord, I don't love her. I want you to cause my love to increase and abound. And he will. Lord, I am impatient with Sam. I need patience for my husband, who is slow. And he gives it to me. And that's what I mean. By you push his button, you claim his verses, and let him do what he said he came to do. We went back over there later, and we had Inda come and stay with us, and I said to her, Inda, would you like to speak to the children? Oh, yes, ma'am. And so I called three different children. Sam, oh, she said, how are you, Sam? Dawn, how about you, Dawn, and your baby? Mark was at Auburn. We got Mark on the phone, and I said, Mark, Inda wants to speak with you, and gave her the phone, and he said, Di. And she said, Mark. And she gave me the phone and ran away. She was crying. She couldn't bear to hear his voice. And I knew she'd never get over him. Why? She loved him more than the rest of us? No. He let her do what she came to do. And she manifested her love to him because he let her do and fulfill her responsibility in our house. And then every morning when I waked, she was sitting out there on the floor, and she would hear my feet, and she would run and get my coffee and knock on the door and open the door, and she would say, your coffee, ma'am, with this same look on her face. And I thought, oh, for 3 years I denied her that wonderful thrill of doing what she came to do. The only reason she had to live was to serve us. And it broke my heart to think that my pride denied her. And I'll tell you, a lot of us have so much pride that we'll do it ourselves, and we're not going to call on God. I remember there was a man in a conference I did. He heard that story, and he told me later, he said, it didn't mean much to me until I went to Asia. He said, I went to the Philippines, and he said, I got in my hotel, and this little tiny girl was going to carry my bags up the steps. And I said, oh, no, you can't do that. And he said, and I remembered what you said. And he said, I suddenly saw what you were talking about. And I realized it's hard for me to let somebody else do something for me. And then again, once I went to a conference, and I went out to the book table, and this little girl came along, and she was looking at the books, and I knew she wanted one, and she couldn't afford it. And so I said to her, would you like one of those books? And she said, well, could I order it? And I said, no, you can't order it. I'll give it to you. And she said, oh, no, you can't do that. And I said, I can if I want to. It's my book. And she said, oh, I know, but I just don't want you to do that. And I said, well, I'm going to do it anyway. And then I looked at her and I said, I think you're old enough to know to say thank you. Why don't you just say thank you and go enjoy the book? And she said, oh, thank you so much. And she went away. Now, just down the hall, there was another lady that had made earrings. And she was selling those earrings to make money to live. And so I said to Sam, hey, let's go down and I'm going to buy some earrings from that lady because I want to support her and encourage her. So we get down there, and I pick up these earrings. They didn't have a price on them. And I went over, and I said, how much are these earrings? And she said, oh, Mary Glynn, they're nothing to you. I want to give them to you. And I said, oh, no, you can't do that. Oh, I didn't want you to do that. Now, very quickly, to end my story. About 4 years ago, we got a letter from Inda. She never learned to write, but she had someone write us. And the letter said, dear ma'am and sir, Inda has cancer, and she's in great pain, and she's going to die. But she needs money. She doesn't want to ask you for it, but she needs money to buy pain medicine. And it was, several $100s a month, maybe even $4 or $5, I don't remember. We didn't know how to get it to her. You know, you send money over there, someone will steal it. She could die, they wouldn't tell us. And so we went over to Mark and Nancy's house, and we said, Mark, what can we do? And he said, well, let me see if we can get the prescription and get a doctor to write it and get someone here to let us have it at rock bottom cost and see if we can mail it to her. And Mark did all that, and we got the medicine, and we called her on the phone. She was too ill to walk, and someone brought her across the street. She got on the phone, and we said, hello, Inda. And she said, hello, ma'am. She said, I'm not going to make it. And I said, I know, Inda, that's okay. Because you're going to go to heaven, and you're not going to have any more pain and no more suffering. And then Mark got on the phone, and this is what he said. He said, Di? And she said, Mark. And in his forceful way, he said, Indi, you listen to me. You will never need anything as long as you live. He said, you have my phone number, and all you have to do is call me Colette, and I will send it to you. In 24 hours, Federal Express will have it at your door. Do you understand? Yes, Mark, thank you. He said, no, and you repeat what I said. And she said, Mark, you said that if I need something, you'll send it. He said, that's right. And she said, I love you, and we said, I love you, and we hung up, and Indi died 3 weeks later. But Mark came in and got in my face, as he always does, and he said, Mom, if she needs us, we're going to go. Doesn't matter what it costs, and it doesn't matter how long we have to stay. If she needs us, we're going to go. Now, why did Mark do that? Because of what she did for him. Sam and Dawn would have done that. But Mark gets on the phone and says, I'll give you anything. And I've decided that that's the way we are as Christians. You see, if you try to do for God to be what He wants you to be, you will burn out, wear out, tire out, and give up and say, I can't do it. But if you lay back, push His button, and let Him do for you, and you go through hard times and heartaches and great disappointments, and He comforts you and gives you peace and gives you joy and brings you through stronger, oh, there's nothing you won't do for Him. There's just nothing you won't do for Him. So don't go out of here all charged up about what you're going to do for God. Go out of here in a few minutes all charged up about what you're going to let Him do for you. And realize that the greatest hindrance you have is your pride. And especially if you're a self-made man or woman. I have to say woman. Men will get mad at me. That's true, because you're used to doing it.